What is up, guys? Wraec here with new video, and today, while scrolling through some of my older videos, I noticed that I haven't made a core tier list for some time. Well, I'm not really a fan of tier lists in that sense, but what I want to do is, as last time, tell you my 3 best cores, my opinion. This time around, we have to split it up a bit. We have to split it up between PvP and PvE. Mainly because last time there wasn't really a difference. You would use the same cores in the same order for both PvE and PvP, while today we have some new core options. Since then we got a lot of new Transcendence heroes. I think, when did I do that actually? I think it was even before BQA, so we got like 4 new cores at least. I tested quite a few more. The meta has shifted a bit, so a lot has happened actually. That made it now so that we use kind of different cores in PvE and PvP, and especially the HHA core has been pretty meta shifting in PvP. Not that much in PvE, we'll talk about that a little bit later. Let's first hop into the PvE cores, so if you care for that. Place 3, we will always do 3 cores. Place 3 was LFA last time. This time around, I will give it to MFF. MFF's core is actually one of the best cores in the game, in my opinion. In general, it can be used in PvP. I have seen that a bit. It is a little bit unreliable, that is the problem. What it basically does is, at the beginning of the battle and at the end of each round, Mystic Fairy Freya grants Pistol Essence to one random ally. And this buff Pistol Essence increases attack by 20%, speed by 20 for 4 rounds. And there's also a little bit of a shield effect to it. And this spreads around. Eventually all of your heroes will have Pistol Essence and will just have more attack, more speed. And as you now know, more speed, that is quite nice for PvP, but due to the limitations of it not always being on the hero that you want, especially at the beginning of the fight, this can disrupt your energy feeds, can be a little bit difficult. But in PvE, it has seen a lot of use in Star Expedition, where we use Mystic Fairy Freya to amplify damage anyway. So having that extra attack 20% at just Core Liberation 3, if we check out Core Liberation 8, we actually have 40% extra attack. So that is quite huge. And having 40% extra attack is a lot more damage than you would expect. So that is quite a good core indeed, but due to the limitations of it having to spread a little bit between your heroes and not always landing on the hero you want, I would only see it at place 3. It has the added advantage though that Freya is a hero that is quite often used in teams, so she will be on the team, and if you have a noble core on her, this will buff the core liberation, of course, on all other cores that you use as well. So that is definitely an advantage of this specific core. Going for place 2, we see a core that we saw the last time as well, and this is of course the Starwing Jorah core. Starwing Jorah core hasn't really seen any use in PvE, as I think I saw like 1 or 2 teams. GOP's team, if we saw that in the last IDA, that was a Starwing Jorah team, but that is also an S-tier Starwing Jorah with a god roll, with CI offset, GK, CI precision, and also precision. So yeah, absolutely insane Starwing Jorah, and that of course can make use of such a core, and an insane team crafted to perfection at this point. That is also of course pretty nice for this core. But other than that, this core in PvP has not seen a lot of use, mainly because to PDE being released to the game and giving your team virtually 100% or even more control immunity, and thereby making this core pretty unreliable. It is again the effect, basically every time an ally releases an active or a basic skill, there's a chance to inflict a CC with pretty low percentages, to be honest, but it does oftentimes when you run Rui Scepters on your team or have CI offset bonus stats, it does inflict CC, and beyond that, not even CC, sometimes even it gives you energy back, and it can also, we can see it here, restore some health to your heroes, which is quite nice indeed. So in general, if you run like a full energy feed with active skills every round, this will help keep your energy feed up, which is quite nice in PvE. when you don't want to go for the crown team, but for a more offensive team with like some form of CC by the Starving Jar, you can get extra CC and added energy feed, so if one of your heroes die, that is not that much of a problem. So that is very nice. On top of that, we inflict not only Petrify, but Petrify, Rocklock, and Freeze Cold Chill, so the stronger versions of the base CC forms that usually only Starving Jar inflicts, but her core does so as well. On Core Liberation 8, we actually have a 30% chance to inflict Petrify, Rocklock, and what you have to know for this core is whenever an ally releases an active skill, then this chance to CC is triggered, and this chance to CC scales with the CI precision not on the Starving Jar, but on the attacking ally. Means you have a Rogue on the team, this Rogue attacks. If this Rogue has like a Receptor equipped or has a Control Precision imprint or an Aerofsit imprint, that will help heighten the chance to inflict a CC on the enemy with the effect of this core. So that being kept in mind, this is our place 2, and place 1 it hasn't really changed, but is now a little bit more of a consideration. Star Alchemist Holmes Young. Star Alchemist Holmes Young, the main reason we used this, way back it was mostly because we could inflict Perceptual Disorder, and in PvE you wanted the attack and the armor, and on top of that the heal, which gave you huge survivability. The thing is, nowadays it's still a huge damage boost, because we get attack every time one of our heroes is hit. That will give us an 8% attack buff at Core Liberation 3, or if we check Core Liberation 8, that is actually a 16% attack buff for every single hit that this hero takes. Like if there are 6 enemies, every enemy hits this specific hero, we get 6 stacks, which is a cool 96% attack buff, which is absolutely enormous, and definitely a huge damage buff. On top of that, we get all that armor, all that HP restoration, so quite nice indeed. The only thing that is keeping me from that is that I often find myself, when designing a team for PvE, not using Star Alchemist Holmes Young, because he just doesn't provide very much beyond having his core. You use his core, and then, yeah, what does he do? He could put Perceptual Disorder on an enemy, but if you really wanted CC, you would use Starving Jar. And oftentimes we rather have a burst meta with DTV, with Swordsman, Mockman. Those heroes are way better at just bursting enemies down, and then you're done with it. And you don't really want to use the skill set of Star Alchemist Holmes Young that is based on keeping enemies from attacking and bringing you into later rounds. So that's not really that nice. Still, this attack buff, in my opinion, is still huge enough so that you would consider taking off maybe not putting in Mystic Fairy Freya in the team, or if there is no CC in the enemy team, maybe don't put Phantom Defiler Lena in the team. Instead, put Star Alchemist Holmes in, activate his core, and profit from this huge attack buff, from this huge survivability buff, and that will really help you progress through PvE, through PvP. Not that much. He has still seen use. I mean, a lot of teams with DTV still use him, and he can be quite nice. Like if you inflict Perceptual Disorder on an enemy, and that specific enemy is a DTV, and this DTV happens to gain his analysis, his weakness disclosure, and still has Perceptual Disorder on him, that will keep you alive for a round or two. So it can be quite nice indeed. So going that was basically all this for PvE. To recapitulate, third place, Mystic Fairy Freya, mainly speed and attack buff. Then on the second place, Starving Jar for CC and to sustain energy feed. And on the first place, we have Star Alchemist Holmes Young. A little bit of CC with the Perceptual Disorder, but also for the huge attack buff that he can provide. Now for PvP, the list starts off on place 3 with Starving Jar. Again, basically for the same reasons. She hasn't seen too much use. I was just talking about the team with from GOP. In that situation, she can be good. The thing is, mostly, it's not that Starving Jar's core is such an insanely good core. The point is we just don't have that many cores that have a huge impact on PvP. Like I tested the Vulcan core, for example. And on paper, this one seems insane. I looked at it, and when I read that the first time, I thought like, okay, we have armor increase, we have damage, we have dodge reduction, we have all those effects, all damage reduction. And if you use that in a battle, yeah, you hardly notice it. And that is like a really big problem. And then you have like stuff like Mockman Core, which gives you a little bit of a crit increase, and not really a thing. Or if you put them in the front row, that gives you like a damage reduction increase, I think, and that is something you don't really need if you run the DTV lineup that I run as well. If we check that out, for example, first of all, you won't have him in your team, and the other thing is, even if we had that, the extra damage reduction wouldn't change a thing, so it's pretty worthless. It is there, of course, like Ferric Investor, but getting to that health triggering requirement is difficult. So a lot of cores just don't do anything. So there isn't much concurrence, and having a core that really can have an impact on the fight, like CCing a DTV, CCing some key enemy hero in a burst team, and having like this extra CC to burst a little bit more, that can be huge, despite PDE obviously hard countering that core, because like, yeah, if you inflict a CC when you do an active skill and PDE removes the CC when you do an active skill, yeah, that, of course, kind of cancels each other. So that is a little bit of a problem. We have a very weak place 3 here, I have to say. Like a place 3 that I would say, whenever we get a good PvP core, this will fall off. This will fall off. Another option would be if we get a lot of CI offset, then it would be instantly in again, because yeah, or people have a reason to not run PDE anymore, because like all of the teams run PDE. As soon as she drops out of, I would say 40-50% teams, we will see Starving Jericho rise again, because it is a super strong core. It is a core that will have an impact on the fight if the enemy does not run PDE, or you have super strong CI or control precision stats. In that case, then yeah, you can do something with it. Place 2, and that is the most interesting part, in my opinion. Place 2, Hyperspace Hunter Ilamak, indeed a new core, and it has pushed itself on the list. Has pushed Starving Jara already to place 3 from place 2. And what it does is quite interesting. At the beginning of the battle, we reduce enemy precision, which is nice because Hyperspace Hunter Ilamak revolves around block and precision in general. So he wants to block, reducing enemy precision makes it easier to block, so that's nice. Also, we have a debuff on all of the enemy team, which is huge. And precision usually would upgrade the enemy damage, so we reduce their damage as well by that. And then we have a 100% chance to taunt 2 enemies with the highest attack for 2 rounds. And that is great. That is great. We saw some counter teams against the DTV meta using SFX. A really, really big SFX. And the Drake. So the idea was SFX attacks. One enemy has defense down from the Drake, and usually this hero might use a crown or something that will be disabled through the defense down, and the SFX, with her 5-6 hits, depending if you use active or basic skill, can easily slaughter that hero and get a kill, get impeccable flow, inflict huge damage. Can be very nice. The thing is, if you run Hyperspace Hunter Ilamak with that core, and you don't run him as lowest life, yeah, then SFX will be taunted and will attack this Hyperspace Hunter Ilamak, who then blocks, gets buffs for your entire team, and nothing dies. So that is indeed quite huge. And even if the enemy does not run an SFX, you might taunt an DTV, you might taunt a Star Alchemist Holmes-Young, and those can then just attack this Hyperspace Hunter Ilamak. Even if you have like a Star Alchemist Holmes-Young that could usually put Perceptual Disorder on 2 enemies with his core or with his active skill, this will all just be on Hyperspace Hunter Ilamak. Of course, this doesn't keep up forever or doesn't hold up forever, but for the time that you have taunt on those enemy heroes, this is absolutely huge. And then we have every successful box another chance to inflict taunt, and what we also have, reduce crit by 50% and holy damage by 15% for 3 rounds. In my experience, this only happens when we really inflict taunt. It doesn't seem to happen without inflicting taunt, even if we block 6 times. I've not seen like that we inflict the attribute reduction without the CC, so that seems to be dependent on each other. But just look at that damage reduction that you can inflict with that. Reduce their crit by 50%, holy damage by 15%, and all enemies' precision by 30%. So your enemies won't have any precision anymore. His strongest heroes won't have any crit anymore, and won't have a lot of holy damage anymore. So that is absolutely insane. That is an absolutely insane damage reduction. Of course, we have things like attribute reduction purify, yeah, and people can run it more easily because of PvE, but still, you will often see that the enemy does way less damage than you would expect. And even if you are, your opponent runs a DTV that gets weakness disclosure at one point, still, at that point, this hero might not have crit, might not have 40 damage, and maybe his crit is guaranteed, DTV's crit is guaranteed on some skills, but still, I noticed that my team can sometimes survive a weakness disclosure active, and there needs to be a second one to kill it, or there's even the chance that even after weakness disclosure active from an enemy DTV that is usually devastating to your team, that my team still survives and is still able to get the kill to secure the win. And this is all what this core can do for you, and this is definitely huge. Gives him place 2, and in contrast to the Starwing Jar core, this is not a weak place 2, this is a strong place 2, meaning it's way closer to being place 1, it's just that I think it's often only effective in the first 2 rounds, because we inflict CC, Taunt is a CC, and we have the same problem that Starving Jar has. At one point, those enemies just have a lot of CI from the PDE, so we don't inflict Taunt anymore. If that wasn't the case, I would think that this core is the absolute best in the game for PvP. But considering that we often will only see Taunt in the first 1 or 2 rounds, yeah, we have to see it clearly. It is place 2 in my opinion. Place 1, yeah, I mean it still is. It still is Star Alchemist Holmes Young. Because we can make use of this huge armor, we can make use of this huge attack, we can make use of the heal, and we can use all of that in PvP, and he still has a place in PvP much more easily than he has it in PvE. Because, as I said, we can put Perceptual Disorder on a DTV, and it can keep us alive. So, in my opinion, you either run HHA, or you run SAH in PvP. This is what makes sense. You either want this core or you want the HHA core. And both of which are strong. In my opinion, currently Star Alchemist Holmes Young has a little bit of the upside, because while he buffs the team, he also inflicts Perceptual Disorder, and Perceptual Disorder, in contrast to Taunt, is no CC. Perceptual Disorder, when we check that out, that is on the bottom here, that is a skill effect, meaning it can be purified, it can't be blocked by control immunity, so that is still a big advantage that Star Alchemist Holmes Young has. A little disadvantage that brings them closer together, the core of Star Alchemist Holmes Young is limited, meaning after a certain amount of its effects are triggered, all of those effects remove bottles. This core will eventually burn out and will no longer provide all of its effects, which makes it a little bit weaker in longer fights. But then again, as I said, we kind of have the same situation with the HHA core, given that once PDE buffs the control immunity of the team high enough, this core will mostly do nothing, at least not inflict the taunt that you would love to have on the enemy. So, in comparison, both cores are pretty close together. Star Alchemist Holmes Young, HHA, both a little pretty close together, but I see Star Alchemist Holmes Young at the top. So, to come to a conclusion, which core should you build? Well, quite obviously Star Alchemist Holmes Young, because that is the best core in the game, and it is still. And I could see a meta now where it isn't anymore. That is the major change to the last one, the HHA core, the introduction of that. I could see a meta where this isn't the case anymore. But given that our next hero that we see, Transcendence hero, is G-Star, and that we see on the base version of G-Star that there is Spiraling Toxin, detonates, we see Poison Dot, we see Burn Dot, and the core of Star Alchemist Holmes Young has dot synergy. It buffs dots. I would say we certainly are stronger on the way towards having an even more of an Star Alchemist Holmes Young meta, because as you can see, like we have this Immaculate Potion to increase dots, so we have dot synergy on Star Alchemist Holmes Young. And when there is a dot meta, there will be Star Alchemist Holmes Young to buff attack and to provide dot buffs. So I would say this is the best core. will provide you with the best effect, but you should be careful when you build it, because especially when you are a whale, you might start off building like your first 1 or 2 Transcendence heroes. And at that point, if you're not a really huge whale, Star Alchemist Holmes Young is probably not the hero you want to build first. So you might have the time to build another core first. And if you start off maybe with a Ferrocune Vessel as a carry hero, it might be wise to just build her core up to Noble, and by the time you reach the point where you can build Star Alchemist Holmes Young, you have collected enough cores again to build your next core. If you are free to play or low spender, then probably you build more Transcendence hero than you build cores, and it's worth to go for this first, and this might be a wise option. But this is something that you have to consider for yourself. I will just tell you, this is the strongest core, HHA, second strongest for PvP, Starving Jara, second strongest for, third strongest for PvP, and for PvE we have Star Alchemist Holmes Young as strongest, Starving Jara second strongest, and MFF as third strongest. And those are the cores that you should keep in mind, and I will leave you guys the decision. If you see anything else that you think is a strong core, or if you have an opinion on this, feel free to type it in the comments. I will gladly check out all the comments, and I wish you guys a great day, and we will see us in the next one.